Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. In a recent article for the Calcutta newspaper The Telegraph, my guest has drawn attention to certain aspects of the crisis in Manipur that haven't got the attention they deserve. And when you look at them carefully, you realize that there may be a lot more to this story and its origin than we have appreciated. And in turn, that also has a bearing on the steps that are necessary to tackle the crisis in Manipur. Joining me now to share and explain his thinking is the author of the article, the director of the Northeastern Social Research Center in Guwahati, Father Walter Fernandes. Father Walter, I want to start with some of the points you make in that recent piece you wrote for the Telegraph on the 25th of June, before I talk to you about steps that are needed to resolve the serious differences between the Meitei community and the Kuki-Zo community. First of all, you write, although the Nagas and the Kukis joined hands to oppose the move on tribal status for Meiteis, the Kukis were singled out for attacks. More importantly, you add, attempts seem to have been made to provoke the Nagas and turn it into a Naga-Kuki conflict, but they failed. Who do you think and why do you think the Nagas were exempted? And more importantly, who made the failed attempt to turn this into a Naga-Kuki conflict?
Well, obviously, it's the people in power. I won't mention them, it's obvious, who have let the armed groups, send the armed groups to the Kuki. They attacking only the Kuki is part of the divide and rule policy. They couldn't afford to take on both of them. So they could attack the Kuki because in the popular mind, they are perceived as refugees who have come from Myanmar, occupying land, etc., do not really belong to Manipur. They are closer to the Mizo, so they could be isolated. That looked like the strategy. So they tried to provoke the Nagas sometimes. Fortunately, they didn't succeed. The Nagas did not fall in the trap. They kept quiet, did not come out openly in favor of one or the other, but one could see that their sympathy was on the other side, on the side of the Kuki, but they remained neutral, did not get provoked.
Inherent in what you're saying is that the Meiteis were instigated to attack the Kukis. This was deliberate and it was done on instigation by people you refer to as people in power. That's inherent in what you're saying.
Yeah. You can see that in the statement some of the leaders made, that the Kuki are occupying, attacking the Nagas, they attacked the Nagas, they killed the Nagas, they tried their best to provoke them. That's where the provocation in words.
Explain
Action as such, there were a couple of attacks on the Nagas. That was, they say it was a mistake. They were careful when they attacked a Naga woman to apologize, say we did it by mistake, which they did not do with the Kuki.
So you're absolutely clear in your mind, and I'm repeating this because it will be controversial to the ears of the government, but you're absolutely clear that the people in power instigated Meitei groups and organizations to deliberately attack the Kuki. The Kukis were attacked, and this was done deliberately.
It looks pretty clear from all the events. It began with the eviction on 26th April under a notification issued in 1966, which has not been used till now. They used it suddenly to say that Kuki land is forest land. And so far, after so many, more than 50 years, they are using that notification, which the Kuki and the Naga have rejected.
Now you said
and then,
this was done.
Then comes the case in the High Court in March 27, where the High Court, one judge bench asked the state to recommend the Meitei to the tribal status. Then there is the demonstration joined by the Naga and the Kuki. But then only the Kuki are attacked. There is a method in that strategy.
Now, the second point you make in that Telegraph article of the 25th of June is the following. You say, for the first time, religious places were attacked in order to give the conflict a communal turn. And in this connection, the Archbishop of Imphal has told the Indian Express on the 18th of June that 249 churches in the valley have been attacked, and he believes this is deliberate targeting because most people would not have known these are churches. Again, I want to ask you, who do you believe has tried to give this conflict a deliberate communal religious turn?
Well, in most conflicts in the Northeast, including those in Manipur, are around land and identity. It's the All India forces from India, communal forces, who try to introduce the communal element in it. It has happened in other places. It's happening in Manipur. So the strategy seems to be pretty clear that you give it. There are two different aspects: the local conflict, which is around land and identity, and other privileges, jobs, etc., and the All India parties, the organizations, trying to introduce a communal element in it. The two go side by side. So the communal element is present, but as imposed from outside, and these armed groups would not have been able to attack those churches, which they didn't know they were churches. Ordinary people don't know that those are churches in the valley particularly. It means someone has identified them and given them the place.
Has this been done by organizations like the Arambai Thengol and Meitei Dipon? Are those the organizations that are giving it a communal touch and color?
No, those are the ones, they are the ground level troops attacking. It's the All India, the organization, the political parties that are trying to give them a communal turn, to divert attention from the local issues. So there is a communal turn deliberately introduced by the All India parties. As long as the conflict was local, it took the form of blockades of highway and so on. not a religious term. They never spoke of themselves as Hindus and Christians, but as Meitei, Kuki, and Naga.
In which case, let me ask you this. Are Hindutva groups involved? Is the BJP, which is very close to those Hindutva groups, itself involved?
Well, I don't want to mention, it's obvious, so I don't want to mention the obvious.
In other words, it's as obvious that the BJP and Hindutva groups are involved in making this communal as it is obvious who the people in power are who've been instigating the Meitei to attack the Kuki. Both are obvious.
Well, I think you should draw your own conclusion from that. So these things are rather obvious from the way the attacks have been organized. Obviously, they are well funded. Where did the funds come from? Obviously, they are well organized. Who organized them? We have seen groups of 200 young persons coming on motorbikes who gave them to 50 to 100 kilometers away from Imphal. Who gave them the motorbikes? Who told them about the targets? I think things, and how come they could steal 4,000 arms and some lakhs of rounds of ammunition from the police and the others? Could it be done without support from the organizers?
This brings me directly to the following sentence in your article for the Telegraph. You write, one would be justified in concluding from these events that the conflict was well planned, funded, and executed with precision by people in power. In most cases, the security forces remained mute spectators. This time, Father Walter, I will specifically ask you. Your words are, the conflict was well planned, funded, and executed with precision by people in power. You're clearly talking about Biren Singh and his government, even though you aren't naming them.
Well, I don't want to name persons. It should be clear from the context who the persons are. And they may be even persons above him. But
when you say persons above him, do you mean people in authority in Delhi like the Home Minister and perhaps the Prime Minister?
Well, I don't want to name names, but it is that it was organized by people in power, whoever they be, is clear. Because who would identify those churches? Who would identify the places to be attacked? Who would know this place has cookies in Imphal and the surroundings?
I'll make 2 points here. I won't embarrass you further by pushing you to identify who you mean by people in power, but what I'll say is I identified Biren Singh. I went so far as to even suggest that people in Delhi who you say could be involved might be the Home Minister and Defense Minister, and you did not deny it. I'll just leave it there. You did not deny it. You said it's obvious you don't want to take names. But I want to make another point. This has therefore been for political and perhaps communal reasons deliberately done by people who rule the country or rule the state. That is what you're saying.
It comes to that. It comes to that ultimately. So I don't want to say anything more. The events show that.
One more thing, Father Walter. In that article, you make another point, which I think is going to be contentious, but it's important for me to raise. You say, and I'm quoting you.
Beg your pardon?
I
couldn't hear you properly.
There's one more point you make in that article you wrote for the Telegraph, which will clearly be contentious, but it's an important point and I will raise it. You write, and I'm quoting you, unfounded rumors were spread that some Meitei women had been raped in Churachandpur to justify the raping of Kuki women in retaliation. Now, I'm going to say this very carefully because I do not want to err. But what you're suggesting is that whilst it's true that the Meitei have raped Kuki women, it's not true that the Kuki have raped Meitei women. That is clearly suggested in that sentence.
There I'm referring only to the beginning of the conflict. I've checked with different groups, and it seems that part doesn't seem to be true, that Kuki women were raped. In fact, Meitei women were raped. In fact, that is where the Kuki women prevented men from attacking the Meitei. When men were trying to attack the Meitei, they were prevented. I'm referring only to the beginning of the conflict. What happened later, I cannot say, because when a conflict continues, there is polarization, all types of attack. These things might or might not have happened later. I'm referring only to the beginning of the conflict at Champur.
So just to be clear, you're saying in the early days of the conflict, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th of May, Meitei women were not raped by the Kukis, but Kukis were raped by the Meitei. That may have changed afterwards, but in the first few days, Meitei women were not raped, whilst Kuki women were raped. That's the point you're making.
Yes. So that part is not true. That was used as a pretext for retaliation. And that, I guess, is part of planning.
In other words, the claim that Meitei women had been raped by the Kuki is not true, but it was used by the Kuki as part of a plan to retaliate.
Yeah, possible. I don't say positively, but it looks like a part of the plan.
And once again, you believe people in power behind this?
Beg your pardon?
Once again, you believe people in power were behind this?
Whoever, whether it's those people in power told them or others who planned the strategy, is difficult to say, but it is part of a plan.
Now, before I move on to other issues, I want to raise with you a couple of Facebook posts and a couple of tweets and ask whether, in your eyes, this is proof that all of this was planned and all of this was instigated. The first, and I'm holding it up, is the Facebook issued by Pramod Singh. He's the head of the Meitei Dipon. He issued it on the 28th of April, roughly 5 days before the trouble started on the 3rd of May. And this post says, I'm reading it, let's annihilate our traditional rival on the hills. Then, sometime towards the end of May or early June, this tweet was issued by Subhash Khoer Akpam. Subhash Khoer Akpam, and I believe he's a member of the Arambai Tengol. And this tweet says, weapons given to us by Meitei police is still with us. We will use it to cleanse tribals from the valley area. And finally, this tweet was given to me just a few days ago, 3 or 4 days ago at the most, by Lalboy Neshchal, the General Secretary of the All Manipur Tribal Union, and it says, or claims to be, I should say, from the Arambai Tengol itself directly. It has the Arambai Tengol name just there. And this tweet says, our leader, N. Biren Singh, has advised us not to attack Kuki villages anymore. Now, are these three proof and corroboration of planning and of the fact that people in power were instigating? Is that how you would interpret them?
Well, when you put the three together, it looks like that, but I don't think it's worth discussing that further, because that it's planned it well. Planned is clear, that the people in power were aware of it, were possibly behind it, seems clear. And I think we have to stop at that, because there's no sense in continuing that discussion on whether who was the person. What is important is that it was well planned, well funded, well organized,
One
and
last
that cannot be
question.
done
One,
without people in power.
one last question, and then I will move on, Father. You will have incurred the wrath of Biren Singh. You will have probably incurred the wrath of Amit Shah and perhaps Narendra Modi. Are you aware that they will be furious, even though you haven't taken their names? It's crystal clear you're pointing the finger at them. Are you aware they will be very angry with you?
I know. That's why, I mean, I do not want to name anyone, but they will be angry. But sometimes you have to speak the truth. I've done that in the past and I've paid the price.
In other words, your conscience required you to speak out.
Yeah, so I'm trying to avoid that, avoid naming anyone, but because it's not one or two individuals, but the whole system that is worked out.
Okay. Let me then come to two other points that you make, which I think are important, and you make them again in that article published by the Telegraph on the 25th of June. The first point is about what people call the land imbalance in Manipur, which, as you know, lies at the very core of the Meitei anguish. The Meitei are 53% of the population, but they're restricted to 10% of the state, which is the valley. On the other hand, the tribes comprise 40% of the population, but live on 90% of the land, which is the hill areas. Now, you make a very important point, which most people haven't appreciated. You point out that 67% of the 90% that is the hill country is in fact forest land, which means it's not habitable, it's not cultivable. And therefore, the land imbalance, when you bear this in mind, is nowhere near as stark as people originally thought it was.
Yes, the imbalance is not as great as it appears when you put 10% against 90%. There is imbalance, but one cannot go on repeating that. One has to find a way out of it, some compromise, some negotiations that can take the communities out of this conflict, out of this imbalance. How? I think one needs to, first of all, involve the civil society groups.
So let me stop you.
Dialogue.
Let me stop you, Father.
Secondly,
Father, let me stop you. I will definitely come in a big way to how this matter should be sorted out and how civil society organizations must be involved. But before I do that, there's one more point that is important that people did not appreciate until you wrote about it in that article for the Telegraph on the 25th of June. I must raise that point before we come to how we handle the crisis. You make a very important point about the Kuki people. You write, and I'm quoting you, after the defeat of the Kukis in the Anglo-Kuki War of 1917-1919, the British regime evicted them from their land, dispersed them all over the Northeast, and justified its actions by creating the myth that the Kukis were nomads who went around occupying land belonging to other tribes. And then you add, most people accept that myth today and treat Kukis as refugees with no right over land. The refusal of other communities to recognize the Kukis' rights over land further complicates ethnic relations. And here, if I've understood you correctly, you are directly countering a point repeatedly made by Biren Singh that the Kukis are encroaching on forest land, that they are encroaching on protected land. Have I understood that correctly?
Well, it's not just Biren Singh who makes it. That is the popular belief all over among the other remaining communities. So I think that is where we need to help with a better understanding between the communities, recognition of rights of everyone to land and to livelihood, and find a way, the type of development of land, development as such in Manipur that is equitable, that is beneficial to all. You cannot stop at ownership, and ownership alone does not give the answer. Ownership is required, but we need land development, other types of development that is equitable, whose benefits reach all. And that requires a long dialogue between the communities and between the state and the communities. And that requires a long dialogue.
Let's then at this point, Father, take up how do we tackle this crisis. It's important that we discussed the points that you raised in your article, because they are the background that people must keep in mind. That this was instigated, that this was well-funded, that people in power were responsible, but also that the land imbalance is not as stark as most people realize, and also that the Kukis are not encroaching. There is a history that people have forgotten. With all of that in the background, let's now come to the question, how should this crisis be resolved? And I'll begin by putting this to you. The Kukis insist that they cannot live with the Meitei any longer. They want a separate administration, whether that's a separate state or a new union territory. And my first question is, Father, has it really come to separation, or is there still space? Is there still a chance that the communities can talk and negotiate and remain within a united Manipur?
Well, that there should be some new type of administration is obvious. Obviously, the Kuki are giving an extreme position in negotiations, in a polarized situation. You begin with an extreme situation as a point of negotiation, as a bargaining point. And that's how I see what see what the Kuki is saying. This is our final position, but let's negotiate. I think that nothing can be achieved purely through negotiations between the state and the Kuki. The Naga community has to be involved. The Meitei have to be involved. I think that is where first, just changing from the top level is not going to solve the problem, because the anger is high among the people. We need to begin facilitate dialogue between the people to people dialogue. That is where civil society has to intervene. Unfortunately, during the last few years, credible civil society groups have been sidelined. All three communities had and still have some credible civil society groups. They have been sidelined. And today, these armed groups have taken their place. We need to get away from that system and go towards a new beginning of dialogue between the people, between the communities, not just top-level dialogue. That alone is not going to solve the problem.
If I understand correctly,
and that's where
if I understand correctly, you're saying that civil society groups from all three communities, the Kuki, the Meitei, and the Naga, need to get together. They need to talk. They need to dialogue. That makes a lot of sense. Can you identify some of the credible civil society groups who've been sidelined but now need to be brought back into central focus?
No, it's dangerous at this stage to name them, because those few who came forward to oppose it were attacked and had to leave the state and to go in hiding. I do not want to name them, but those who hear, they will know what I mean. And what is important is that it has to be a two-way dialogue to begin with. At first, it has to be between the Naga and Kuki, because they have to sort out the differences about land, about identity, etc. And that's going to take some time. And then side by side, open a window towards the Meitei. There are many persons among them, some of whom are in hiding, who can really come together. It will be a long process, it won't happen overnight, but it's important to open these windows, small windows, and begin the dialogue.
The important point is who will initiate this, who will take the lead.
And that the civil society groups have to be given that possibility.
Father, the important thing is who will initiate.
That is where, that's where I think some, take for example, there is a feeling that Mizoram and Nagaland should play an important role, because the Kuki Mizo Chin community, family, is close to the Mizos, and the Nagas feel with Nagaland. And there are groups in Nagaland and Mizoram who would be ready to take the initiative and talk to each other. And those are the ones who can make a beginning.
What you're saying,
and they are, I know they are in touch with many civil society groups in Manipur.
Father Walter, what you're saying is very similar to what was said to me 2 days ago by the former communist MP from Outer Manipur, Kim Gangte. She spoke about the need to find a middle path on the basis of give and take. She said the 7 states of the Northeast must come together to help the Meitei and the Kuki find this middle way. And then most importantly, she said that the chief ministers of Nagaland and Mizoram are the 2 people who should take the initiative. Would I be right in saying that your thinking is fairly similar to Ms. Gangte's thinking on this point?
Similar in one way. I agree with the MP that a third party is required. And at the government level, government to government level, the Mizoram and Nagaland chief ministers would be the third party. But also people to people initiatives are required. They should work hand in hand. There are civil society groups in Mizoram and Nagaland who can get in touch with the Manipur, who are in touch with them. So at one level, there are people-to-people initiatives coming from Mizoram and Nagaland elsewhere. And at the other level, government level, you have government-to-government initiatives by the chief ministers of Nagaland. And in fact, they can even provide a model. Take, for example, in Nagaland today, there is the demand for the Eastern Nagaland state. The government of Nagaland seems to be beginning to take initiatives in the direction of having an autonomous component of the state in Eastern Nagaland. You see, many models can emerge through this third-party initiatives.
But there's one very important conclusion that is suggested by what you're saying, that if civil society organizations can get together and talk, if the Naga and Mizo chief ministers can take an initiative, it is still possible to resolve the Meitei-Kuki divide within a united Manipur. There may need to be new administrative structures, maybe autonomous territorial councils like the one in Bodoland, but it is still possible to keep Manipur united.
You see, you cannot have that dialogue within Manipur today. because there is a total breakdown. And it has to be something, even there will have to be some new administration. What type? Don't ask me, because the political situation has to change there. But what is important is that the third party, Mizoram and Nagaland, at government level, at one level, and people's level, at the civil society level, can take the initiative slowly and slowly come to a solution, which may be long term, but something that will bring the people together. Just having new organization at the top level will not solve the problem. The anger among the people is high. The people have to come together at one level, and government to government contacts have to be established at the other. And then slowly the two have to come together.
This is a long process. This is a long process that will take years.
Long process. We have to be ready for a long process and not an overnight solution.
Now, against this background, Father Walter, I want to put two recent developments to you and ask you how you interpret them. First, on Monday, that's just 5 days ago, the Hindu's main front page headline was the following: after meeting Shah, Biren says he will reach out to the Kukis. And the actual article under that headline quoted an unnamed source who said, and I'm quoting, "The chief minister was told that he has to drive home the point among the Meitei that Kukis will be reached out to. He has to convince the people and take care of the state in a bipartisan manner." Does that suggest that there is a change in the thinking of the central government, in their attitude to Manipur, and now they've realized the need to reach out to the Kukis?
Yeah, he seems to have reached that level of understanding with all the attacks and with the conflict going nowhere. And as I've said in the time, the conflict continues, though the militant groups may not be involved at this stage, they will enter and it will become a civil war. And he seems to have realized that things have got out of control. So some remedial measures are required, and that's what he's trying to do. That should be encouraged. Whether he is able to do that or not is difficult to say. But the fact that the people in power have realized that remedial measures are required, some change is required, is a good point in itself. That should be encouraged, but that has to go together with people-to-people dialogue. Only the people on top telling them, now let's open up towards the Kuki, is not going to solve the problem.
Let me now raise, Father Walter, the second point that occurs to me. This time, it may be very contradictory in its implications. On Saturday, the 24th, a mob of some 1,200 or 1,500 women, identified by the newspapers widely as Mira Paibi, forced the army to release 12 militants from a Meitei militant group. These militants are from a group that carried out the Chandel killing of 2015, when 18 army soldiers were killed. Clearly, these were militants who should never have been released, but under pressure from the women they were. Now, the Hindustan Times on the 27th revealed something that was astonishing and shocking. The Hindustan Times revealed that a BJP Meitei MLA called Thanau Jam Sham Kumar Singh was part of the mob, and that he negotiated the release of the 12 militants. Mr. Singh has accepted to the Hindustan Times that he was part of the mob, but he denies negotiating the release. However, the Hindustan Times quotes unnamed army sources who insist that he negotiated the release. Those sources from the army have told the Hindustan Times that a BJP Meitei MLA, Shyam Kumar Singh, negotiated the release of 12 militants. First, let me ask you, what do you make of this?
Well, whether he negotiated or not is a moot point. What is important is that the MLA was leading the mob, and that would have had some impact on the army, and that would have made a difference. And that's what I'm saying. The people in power have been leading these things, and that's what matters. Whether he actually negotiated or not, well, you can keep discussing it. But his presence made a difference seems to be clear.
Father Walter, there's a wider corollary from that incident. It clearly means that whilst the government, in Delhi at any rate, I don't know about the government in Manipur, but whilst the government in Delhi wants to reach out to the Kukis, BJP MLAs in Manipur are siding with the Meitei. There is a clear contradiction between what Amit Shah, the Home Minister, is reported to have said to Biren Singh and what Biren Singh's Meitei MLAs are doing in Imphal. There's a clear contradiction, isn't there?
Yeah, I guess, someone takes a stand. Biren Singh takes a stand. Now we should begin dialogue. It does not automatically bring the whole group together. There are divisions within the system. And that is what you see with one MLA leading the mob and another MLA making a different statement and so on. These are to be expected. But what is important now is to really demand that they stop the conflict, provide security to all the communities, and begin to talk.
Can I end by putting...
Obviously, there are divisions.
Can I end by putting to you, Father Walter, a paradox? We need to create an atmosphere where the two communities, and particularly civil society groups on all sides, can talk to each other and find a middle way. At least in their rhetoric, politicians understand this. But often in their practice and behavior, those politicians end up taking sides and increasing the divide. So do we therefore need president's rule so that politics is put to one side and an atmosphere is created where civil society groups and perhaps the wider community can sit down and talk and find that middle way? Is this a time to say, let's have president's rule, let's get politics out of it?
Well, the fact is that the situation cannot continue. No solutions can be found within the existing system. Whether change of persons or change of administration will deliver the goods is difficult to say. What is needed is a new atmosphere, whether it is change of persons or president's rule or something else, or third party intervening and convincing them to sit together. These are options. If president rule is required to create that atmosphere, I would say yes. But if other solutions can be found, what is required is really bringing the leaders of different communities together at one level and the people's groups together at another level. These two have to happen. And president's rule may or may not help it. It depends.
The problem with president's rule is at the all-party meeting held in Delhi on Saturday, the Home Minister is widely reported to have decided president's rule is not required. That seems to be the position of the Modi government. In that case, should Biren Singh be replaced as chief minister with another man? Because the Kukis are adamant about not talking to Biren Singh and not accepting him. And the truth, as you know, is all 10 Kuki MLAs have expressed publicly a loss of faith in Biren Singh. And then this month, 8 BJP Meitei MLAs have sent a memo to the Prime Minister's office saying the public has lost faith in the government. So even if we can't have president's rule, has the time come to replace Biren Singh and put another new man in the job?
No, it is clear today that they are not ready to talk to Biren Singh. Now, that is what I am saying. We have to find alternatives which do not have to deal with the present administration. How exactly to do that? What is the alternative? That's something we have to. If presidents can do that, fine. If it cannot, if there are other alternative change of persons, that's fine. But what is required is to create an atmosphere of dialogue and provide security to all the communities.
Father Walter, my last question. You have explained what is required. Do you think it will happen?
Pardon?
I said, my last question. You have explained what is required. Will it happen? Are you an optimist? Will the Manipur situation be tackled as you think it should be? Or will it be allowed to fester and get worse?
I have a feeling that many people at the civil society group level in Mizoram and Nagaland are ready to help with the dialogue in Manipur. Now, if Mizoram and Nagaland chief ministers feel that they can help out at the administration level, those two facilitating groups can come together. At the civil society groups, there is a strong feeling that they should help out. And if they can reach out to the groups in Manipur, I think it will help. And if that can be done by the chief ministers of Mizoram and Nagaland taking the initiative, I think it would be good. The third party intervention is required.
Father Walter, thank you very much for sharing your thinking and for making so much time for me. Take care. Stay safe.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Thapar.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.